Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the On Becoming Legend podcast, where every week it is my job to help you live a legendary life in whatever way that you define it. We do this primarily by bringing you content and lessons from my own life so you can learn from my mistakes and avoid them, and by interviewing legendary people so you can learn from their stories as well. This week, I'm interviewing the legendary Jeremy Kean. Jeremy is a serial entrepreneur who has founded or co-founded 4 different companies. He currently operates Route 40 Home and Wellness, an all-natural product manufacturer and wholesale specializing in natural pain management and aromatherapy. There's Spiritwear Inc., which creates custom spiritwear for youth sports. Sudz Fundraising, which partners with nonprofit groups and organizations and assists them in raising money through many fundraising opportunities, specifically items like laundry detergent, soy candles, trash bags, and spiritwear, because at the end of the day, who needs more cookie dough? And Brick Road Media, which specializes in web design, content marketing, and SEO. Currently lives in Indiana with his wife and kids. Jeremy, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you, Rory. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So you're doing a lot now, but I want to go back to the beginning and, sort of retrace the steps and figure out how you got here. So let's go back to college. Did you go to college, and why or why not?
I did what everybody was doing right after high school and went to Ball State and did really, really well with, back then it was Sega Genesis, I think, that we were playing video games with, and I learned to acquire the taste of beer. I wasn't much of a drinker in high school, and beer was nasty, but I figured out how to do it in my college year. And they sent me a really cool letter that said my .57 GPA wasn't really high enough to be invited back for my next semester. So I came back home and paid Dad back the agreed amount that if I did that, this is what I was going to owe. And decided maybe that college really wasn't the thing, and started working, went from there. And then ended up going back again when I was 35 or something. And oddly enough, I still have 4 classes left. I've always been a tough finisher on things. So still have 4 classes left to get my informatics degree, bachelor's. So we're still plugging away. We're going to make this a lifelong project, I think.
Nice. So I want to back up just a little bit and understand a little bit about how you made the decision to go. So obviously you had the agreement with your dad, and I guess he was kind of open to the chance that you might not do well or might not see it through or what have you. But when you were in high school, was there pressure from the family to go to college? How did you decide to go? I mean, was there an option not to? What did that look like?
Both of my parents were teachers, so I think they never put any pressure on it. But I think it was just kind of, there wasn't a whole lot of talk about going anywhere else. You know what I mean? So, but I think I was just kind of denying some of the entrepreneur because, when I was 13, I started a disc jockey business. And had grown that doing school dances and proms, and actually did a wedding when I was like 15, which was weird. But it was kind of always into that. And even my parents now talk about how I employed the neighbor to mow the yards that I went out and picked up, and I'd pay him half the money and never mow a yard, but make as much as the guy that did all the work, kind of thing. So I think the entrepreneur thing has always been there. And, I just kind of, at that point, the DJ thing I was still doing. So every other weekend I was coming home. And working, doing the DJ thing, and then started working for Domino's Pizza too as a driver. So I was always, trying to make the money and split that with fun. I probably had a little too much of the fun and too much of the work and not enough of the grades. So, but, and that's just kind of where I then went into the mortgage business after that. After Domino's, I was a manager. And after doing that, it was time for mortgage. And that's where I lived for about 15 years of the professional career.
So focusing on the sort of your entrepreneurial adventures when you were a teen, do you remember what motivated that? I mean, what was kind of the conversation in your head when you're 13 or 15 and you're looking for these ways to make money? I mean, what was your thought process going through that as a kid?
Well, I think, again, mom and dad being teachers, it was very understood. This is your allowance and this is the expectation. And I respected that because that's how we lived. We didn't live lavish at all. So if I wanted the shiny fancy things, I used to read DuPont Registry magazines at like 17 years old, and I'm like buying Lamborghinis, right? So I've always kind of, back then, was looking at that high style life, but it was a grounded upbringing. So I knew I had to make that money myself. It wasn't going to be inherited. It wasn't going to be a silver spoon by any means. And so, put 2 and 2 together. What can I grind at that age? And, it was either mowing yards, and after that was DJing. Just kept a grind kind of going on top of trying to do that college thing. I actually went to college at first for music, believe it or not. I was a big choir, show choir kind of guy in high school. So once I got the book that was that thick, about 1500s music composition, I was not into the music thing anymore. So there takes you up to my first year at Ball State.
So I'm just curious too, in high school, were you a good student? I mean, did you get good grades in high school, or was it you just kind of did what you had to do to get by?
I was a
Oh,
A.
I think I lost you.
Hang
There you are.
I don't know what happened there. I think I was a B. I got grounded for C pluses, so I was an A B honor roll student. Um, and with the occasional, well, let's just say half the time a C plus that got half my summer taken away. So yeah, I've always battled in a few areas. They found out pretty late in my high school career that I had attention deficit disorder, not the hyperactive kind, but the kind that really hits the what do they call it, when your memory for reading a paragraph or two and you don't
Right.
remember anything.
Like
So
retention. Yeah.
yeah, retention, there you go. So the reading retention, I was like, but back then they didn't really know what that was. So,
Right.
and because I was kind of a slacker and I could tend to manipulate a situation to make it look like it's not my fault. My parents would have been the last ones on earth would have thought that was really me. But yeah, kind of one of those Peter cried wolf went bad stories there. So we didn't really find out until later that there really was something wrong with me, and that's why I couldn't stay in focus and attention. I'm off dreaming of that Lamborghini instead of focusing on chemistry. So
Fair
once we
enough.
got that dialed in, it really became my issue. If there was no more excuses that were legit. So now it's just a matter of getting disciplined enough to make school matter.
Right. So you had the agreement with your dad, you come back from college, and so now you're there. So what was that? Did you immediately go into mortgage after that, or what did that journey look like?
Yeah, I had picked up a friend along the way when I was the assistant manager who came in as a driver, and we got to talk and became friends. He said, "Hey, man, I've already seen this. You know everybody in town, and I know nobody in town. And I can already tell you're not going to be a Domino's pizza guy your whole life. Come with me and let's just join up and help each other build this mortgage business." I'm like, "Mortgage, man?" I'm like, I'm still living with my mom and dad. What's a mortgage? I didn't even know what it was, for the most part, right?
Right.
And so I was like, "Okay, what do I have to lose?" So it was a commission only thing. So I said, "Well, what do I do? Where do I go to start?" Well, he had already kind of turned me over to his uncle. And he said, "Go down to the courthouse and get some leads." Like, what does that mean? So I go down to the courthouse and I was like, I was told I'm a new guy in the mortgage business. And I was told to come down here and get some mortgage leads. And the lady's like, "Oh, yeah, you want those books in the back?" Okay. The recorder books is what I finally ended up coming to find out. So I went back there with several, one subject notebook, spiral notebooks, and just started creating my little spreadsheet of name, address, and where their lender was, and I cross-referenced their phone number to the phone book, and started calling people and said, "Hey, I'm new to this, and these are notoriously high interest rate loans, and we tend to have better rates. Would you sit down with me to see if I could better your situation?" And in about 3 months, I closed 14 loans and was made
Wow.
had made like $10,000 or $15,000 or something that, astronomical to me at that point, probably for that
Right.
amount of work. And it just was like, okay, I'm helping people better their situation financially and making 3 times more than I'm making now, working on my own. Like, yeah, this is where I'm wanting to be. So I ended up working for them for about a year and a half, and then decided I asked for a raise, and they said, "We've never paid anybody more than 50% commission out of the deal, and you're not going to be the first." I said, "Okay, no problem. I really appreciate everything," and went to the state of Indiana and found out what I needed to do to be an Indiana mortgage broker. So I did that, and come to find out I was the youngest one at 19 to get a broker's license for Indiana. And I did that for several years, and then added on real estate, became a real estate broker, and was creating a one-stop shop. I was
Hmm.
going to have an appraiser come in. I was going to have an insurance company come in. We had a property management company, and we had built to about 100 properties ourselves. And pretty much got too big too quick. And when that first big bubble happened, and I think it was 2004 or 5, somewhere in that range, Vacancies were at an all-time high, mortgages slowed up, real estate was slow, and I realized a real valuable lesson in diversification
Mm.
that I wasn't protected in any sort on the other side of things if that specific perfect storm came. So that ended up happening, and we got a restart in Vegas after filing a bankruptcy. We kind of left pretty much everything, and I said I just couldn't really face the people I'd grown up around and known forever. It was just humiliating, and I didn't have it out of my system to start anything else other than mortgage. And the friend of mine who I had originally gotten in the mortgage business with had moved on to a paint detail business, but was living in Vegas. And we remained real close friends. And he said, "Man, come out here and I'll help you get a start and get you hooked up with some mortgage people. And, maybe you can get a free, new start out here. If not, at least it's a couple week vacation away from the wife and the kids." And I'm like, "Man, that's not really what I'm looking for, but at least, the new opportunity sure is, but not the wife kid thing." So I went out there and fell in love. Obviously, who doesn't love Vegas, right? So I started that and found a job within 2 weeks, and another 2 weeks, the daycare was found, and the wife's job was found, and I was already leasing a house. I was in a year lease, so it was kind of like, "Hey, I hope you guys are coming because we're set up." uh, and luckily they did. And so 3 months later, the wife and kids and everybody was moved out there. And I should say that's ex-wife now. That was a previous relationship. So, because I'm sure towards the end of this, the real wife comes into play, and that's real life now. And want to make sure we don't get those two crossed up when when
That's
Kelly
right.
comes to watch this later.
For sure. So I want to go back to the conversation you had with him about getting paid higher commission. So at this time,
Mhm.
the guy that had taken you out of Domino's, it was his uncle's mortgage business
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
went
it
to
was
kind of
his
work
business.
for.
Mhm.
And so uh, the reason I'm asking is because at this point, you're not even 19. I mean, maybe 18, 19, right? And you're
It was,
going
yeah,
to
right
the
at
owner of
18.
a business that you've only been in for a few months, and you're saying, "Hey, I want
Mhm.
to be paid more." How did you make the decision to do that is question one. And then what do you think gave you the courage to do something like that? Because most of the 18-year-olds that I know do not have the balls to pull something like that off. So I'm curious, how you develop that kind of courage at such a young age.
Well, I think it was just instinctive. I started off at 50% and I didn't know anything. And then along the way, I also saw what my friend Mike was doing in volume, and I saw what, Uncle Larry was doing in volume, and it was only three of us. So I'm like, I'm more than 50% of the company, but yet every time they close loans, they go to Vegas or take road trips. And then I'm also the secretary, I'm the office manager, and I'm dealing with all their upset customers. And I'm like, if you want to continue to do that, then you're going to pay me more. And I know in that business at the time, I didn't know anything about payroll and all that. Everything was commission. Everybody got a percent of commission or whatever.
Right.
And I think starting to learn the mortgage business too, and how it worked with back points and basis points. And I started figuring out that, if you give this interest rate, this is how much they pay you, and da 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 da. So it was like, if I'm going to make you this, then why aren't I not getting more like this? And then I don't know where I got the balls to do it. I just kind of was like, this is unfair. And I'm a researcher. Like when I get my head on something, I just don't stop until I figure it out. And I figured out how to get to the state of Indiana where they were like, it's $100 for an application. And, as long as you get a surety bond, that was the big problem back then, was trying to
Mm.
get a underwriter to give me a surety bond. And so I took one that was like 3 times the normal rate, but it was like $800 for a year. I'm like, I was making that in like not even a whole loan. How is this a bad investment? Right. I'm like,
Right.
okay. So I just went through the hoops, found them, jumped them, and got my mortgage broker's license. And now I'm doing the same thing I was doing for them, but now I'm making all of the money,
Right.
and I'm doing it out of my parents' house to start with. So there's no overhead, and this is just a really good gig. So I think it was just instinct, man. It just made sense. To me, that stuff is just common sense. And even now to this day, I still struggle to see some things that I see through that lens, where over here, I see things that, I call the normal people. I don't see what they see. And then vice versa. They don't necessarily see some of these things, but I don't really think that they're that hard to see. But I'm learning now that they really are. It's a difference in personality and difference in just, what kind of lens you're looking out of. And it's a weird transition, but I'm sure we'll get to that later.
Yeah. So you move from that into the sort of the real estate, monopoly that you were trying to develop.
Hmm.
I'm curious what this might be kind of a tough question, but like, where does your ambition come from? Because there's also a whole subset of people that might have just been happy closing, a couple mortgage loans a year or a month or whatever. They would have hit a certain level of income and then kind of gone into coast mode. And
Hmm.
from listening to your story and then also from what I know about you, it doesn't seem like you ever hit that mode. Like there's never a point where you're like, yep, I'm good. You're always kind of like pushing and growing and moving. And I'm curious if you've ever given any thought to what that drives about for you or where that comes from.
Yeah, a couple points maybe come up to mind is I've never liked the word content. Like content is like nails on a chalkboard for me, and I don't like being around people that are content. They're like, "No, I'm good. I'm content." I'm like, I can't be around people like that because I firmly believe, and I have from a very young age, that you're either going this way or you're going that way. But that constant change thing, even though I didn't probably understand it then, I lived it. It's like if I couldn't DJ, I was looking for something else to do. It wasn't, oh, I'm going to go, party more or do any of that too much. So I think I just always like to know that I can buy whatever I wanted to buy. If I wanted those cool sunglasses that came out that everybody else had,
Hmm.
I knew how I had to go do it. I did something that made me enough money to do it. And then I liked that and I wanted something else. So there was always something I wanted early. So it was materialistic and pretty yucky, really, in the grand scheme. But when you're that young, that's all you think about anyway, is money,
Sure.
to do that. So I think that's what got it. And then just the same drive and the same belief system, it just evolved into more of a helping people instead of helping myself.
Yeah, I love that. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that first bubble. So,
Hmm.
anybody who starts anything at some point is going to have challenges, right? So there's nothing unusual about that. I would love to hear, what was kind of your internal dialogue while all that was going on? Because again, I don't know. I guess at that point you said 2004, 2005. How old were you at that point?
Let's see, 2004 and 5, when that about happened, I would have been, see, I was 18 and 95 when I graduated. So 2005, 2005, I'd have been
28, 27,
28.
28.
Yeah, about 27, 28 years old. And I mean, it was well over $1 million bankruptcy. And in our little area, we're talking houses that I was owning with 30,000, 20,000, 50,000, the
Wow.
occasional 80. I mean, to get up over $1 million was headlines around here. So I was just kind of, I think, very mature in a lot of respects, but very immature in a lot of respects too. And I wasn't ready for that kind of public humiliation.
Sure.
I just wasn't emotionally ready for that. And so my only option at that point I felt was to flee and just get away from it, reset, refocus. Because where else with no college degree are you going to get a job making, a couple $100,000 a year minimum
Right.
in a town where the average income at that point is probably $26,000? I mean, it just doesn't happen. And I knew the odds of that were not good. So that led me to Vegas for the land of riches, right?
So I'm curious, do you look back on that differently now? I mean, obviously I can completely understand where, sort of the sense of embarrassment and humiliation, all that stuff came up in the moment. Do you look back on that the same way now and feel humiliated, or is it something that you've been able to reframe and sort of look at a different way?
Yeah, I don't hold much of it as far, it's a learning lesson. I don't really believe a whole lot in failure. I kind of believe in, failure is that learning lesson that, the biggest challenge in that is not making the same mistakes over and over, again and again and again, because and the challenge, or back to the thing, it's really just I think, the mindset stuff that we always talk about. That's what has really evolved from it. But I think I just completely steered off your question. So go back to what you just asked again.
I was
You
just
may have
asking
to
how
edit
you
that
look at
part
it
out.
now. No, I think you're
Oh,
totally
okay,
on
yeah.
track.
Looking at it now, I mean, yeah, I would just look at it as the first lesson that, unfortunately, I probably didn't learn as well as I should have. But now I look back, it was just a lesson that, I'm not embarrassed at all about the way I handled it, because at that point, that's all I could have seen. I felt that was the best decision, and I try not to go back and beat myself up for decisions. It's one of the things I've had to work hard at. As you've alluded to before in conversations, and John's been working with me on 2 years. Um, there's a big fine line between being confident and cocky, and I've been
Hmm.
on that realm of it before, back in the mortgage days.
Sure.
I'm knocking down a $500,000 a year at age 22, 23 in an area like this. I mean, I didn't know how to handle that. I mean, I was bragging, I was flaunting everything, buying pinky rings and running poker games. I mean, I was running poker games, running a mortgage business. I mean, just anything I could do to make money and get attention really at that point,
Hmm.
I think is probably the thing. So, yeah, we've evolved quite a bit since then.
Yeah. So you go out to Vegas. So what was the business you ended up getting into there?
I ended up getting hired to run an internet division of a mortgage company that
Okay.
the owner was very old school traditional. And I had started to look at the internet at that point back here, as a differentiator. I kept always looking at it thinking, man, these are using tools to not have to go do the donut drops at the real estate offices and things like that. I can market to them in much more effective ways, online. And when I talked to him about it, he's like, I need that. I need you. I've got all this money, but I have no idea how to build this.
Nice.
Because he's used to going out, shaking hands, taking people to lunch, taking a year to build a relationship with them to get a deal. And I'm like, man, there's a way better way. And he bought it, and he hired me on the spot to be the internet manager, but they were building out the new facility. So I had 3 months to wait before I could start. And that was the caveat of that job. And so I called my wife at the time. I'm like, here's the deal. It's not going to be as quick as I thought, but this is a way better opportunity than I thought. I figured I'd start at the bottom as a loan officer somewhere and then have to prove myself. So,
Right.
so I ended up having 2 mortgage jobs out there the whole time I was there. But I was there 4.5 years and was in the mortgage business the whole time. So,
Nice.
and
So
then I was
are
there
you,
for the good 2008.
yeah, managed to catch another one, huh?
I'm telling you, man. It's a good
Are,
thing for the mindset training, or I would think I'd had a black cloud through all these different front lines. I'm the first one affected by every national problem.
so are you the first entrepreneur in your family? I mean, was there anybody else? You mentioned that your parents were teachers. I'm just curious if your grandparents or anybody was kind of in the same entrepreneurial vein as you.
From my recollection, my grandpa on my mom's side might have had a little of that entrepreneur hustle. I think he kind of always had a little something going, but I really don't remember a whole lot from that because after that he was a psychologist some sort of, it was really, very intellectual and into some of that. I think he did some consulting maybe on the side. So
Okay.
other than that, I can't think of an entrepreneur until I get on my, maybe like second cousin or uncle side of the family that had a printing business or something. But no, everybody's you know different than me and see different, than that. So not sure where I got it, man.
Yeah. So I'm curious because you've obviously had a lot of success and had some ups and downs and you've done so many things, but you also made the decision at some point to go back to school. So I would love to hear you talk about what that decision was like for you and why you ultimately decided that was a valuable thing for you to do.
That 2008 shakeup when Bear Stearns and Countrywide and everybody announced at 7:30 in the morning on all the big screens in the office that they weren't funding any more loans, and it was very apparent later in the morning, is because this horrific financial disaster was, amongst us. I personally didn't see it coming. It was absolute shocking to us, man. Whether I was just too busy taking loan applications and managing processors, or if there were really any signs, I don't know. But that shook me up, and I realized then I have nothing to fall back on. I mean, I'm going from a couple $100,000 a year to $30,000 a year. I've got to close this gap somehow. And
Mhm.
it just, I went back to the roots and was like, maybe mom and dad were right this whole time. I should have stuck with the college thing. And, that haunts me to this day that I still haven't finished it because now we're in another one. And not that it's the same by any means, but it's still that, there are no guarantees in life. So you need to have everything diversified out, including education, including backup plans, including everything. And there's a lot of holes in that boat, and you know, everybody learns them at a different time. I'm still working on them.
So specifically with informatics though, what was the thought process behind that particular degree and what you thought you might do with it?
Well, I think it ties back to when I had started playing around with the internet days and got that job as an internet person or an internet manager of the mortgage leads. And while in Vegas at the second place, I was also promoted. I started at the bottom there, but it was a much bigger, better opportunity, and became a sales manager and was in the same thing, internet leads, and learning that whole lowermybills.com and how that works, managing a team, calls, and started learning about metrics and conversion metrics and things there from kind of a real, this is real business now. Like I
Right.
never did that even when I was in the mortgage business. So I just took a bunch of applications from a bunch of people I knew that had bad credit and helped them get better credit. And next thing you know, in this area, everybody and the brother wants a mortgage from you. I never really had to even learn marketing back then. It was just do a good job and get back with people, and I was slammed.
Right.
So, and that's kind of where that is.
Hmm. So we still got that to finish. I'd like to, so that, when did you exactly start school again? Was it 2009?
Yeah, it was 2009 when we moved back from Vegas. The 2008 thing cleaned out a $30 million pipeline, and I went back to my wife at that time, and I'm like, I have nothing to fall back on here, and neither do you. At least back home, we have family, we have some support, at least from an emotional standpoint. 'Cause, I mean, we're getting ready to lose everything
Right.
again for the second time in like 4 years. Tied this to this mortgage thing, and I think right then is where I really hit burnout with mortgage. And I was like, this is just, my whole life is in somebody else's hands. That I started forming a really negative opinion politically, and got kind of not so good place watching Glenn Beck too much, and you know, started having some real, why am I doing all this? Like, you can't
Right.
win in this corrupt country, and then real negative stuff. So coming back home became the decision, and I had picked up a third option with one of the lenders to work from them out of a home office in Indiana. And they were one of the only ones that was still trying to truck along and fund some loans. So I stuck it out with them and ended up at least being able to make a living so that we didn't have to file bankruptcy or anything again.
Yeah.
Um, and move back. And so we grinded, man. We just, started over again back here. And then I picked up kind of a root call from the soul. Is like, I'm always helping people. What can I do that's not mortgage anymore?
Right.
So I went into credit repair. I went down to Tampa Bay for a seminar in credit repair. And I was like, this is close enough that I feel comfortable, but it's definitely step enough away that I'm getting out of the burnout feeling. And it was something that revived me again into that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
Because I'd gotten burned over and over and over in the mortgage thing. So I started off doing that, and to transition, because the company that I was working for in Utah ended up going bye-bye. So Wells Fargo ended up picking me up as a loan officer. So I started doing that and credit repair at the same time at an incubator here in town. And then that's kind of where things started to change. And I got kind of feeling good about things again, because I'm helping people with crappy credit again. But this
Mhm.
time I'm not stuck in that mortgage nightmare. I'm just charging them a fair price to get their credit, fixed, and educating them along the way how to budget better and do things better. And so it was really, really rewarding. But at the same time, I was still now running into the same problem. This is a two personality gig, and I'm just this personality doing this. And the detail level that I really needed to scale the business was well beyond me, and really lost the passion then too. Because at that same point, I had mortgage loan officers that were kind of calling like, well, why isn't this guy at 600? And I'm like, man, that's not a miracle. He didn't just get to pay $300 and voila, I changed credit scores. There was a lot of education that needed to be done at that point. And
Yeah.
here I was like, here we go again. I'm not doing this, where I'm getting badgered by real estate agents for not getting loans done. It's like, I'm not writing checks, guys. You know this. So I just got tired of that high stress, I'm the middleman, and I can't do anything other than take, whippings every day for this wage. And I'm just I'm not selling my soul for a paycheck.
Right.
So at that point, that's where I decided to jump back into school, informatics, and thought, you know what, after selling my credit repair business, I've got a little bit of money now that I can sit back and not feel that pressure to have to be, whipped every day. Let me learn something else on my own. So while I was finishing up the informatics direction, or trying to, um, I hooked up with one of the people that I was following quite a bit, that had written a few books on SEO, had done pretty well for himself with some software development. Really cool guy named Jack Humphrey. And I reached out to him, and after realizing that, I looked down at the email signature, and this guy lives in Richmond, Indiana, where I do. And I'm like, what? I'm following people in London and all over the place, and this guy's in my backyard, and I really liked his writing style and everything.
Right.
So I reached out to him and said, hey, man, you want to meet, grab lunch, something to talk about? This was just too wild to not follow up with. And he was like, heck yeah, man, this is cool. And then deja vu happened. The same kind of conversation that Mike and I had. He was like, I'm new to the area and I've written books about this stuff, but I couldn't go out and sell a website or an SEO package if my life depended on it in this town. So
Right.
maybe we hook up. So we had 2 lunches and boom, Brick Road Media was formed. I still remember sitting down there sketching out a logo, trying to figure out whether we should use bricks or not. It's when we realized we weren't going to be the graphic designers of the company. So that, you know, we come up with a quick game plan and said, okay, I'll do my thing. Again, knowing everybody in town, and do the business development sales end of things, and you do the operational thing. And there it was. His wife came on board and became the office manager. And there we went, joined BNI, and the rest is history.
Yeah. I'd like to back up for a second because you kind of just glossed over this, and I think this is really important. So most people, I won't say most people, a lot of people, if they were faced with one really big bankruptcy, would just be crippled. I mean, mentally, emotionally, like they may never go back into their own business after something like that. You bounced back and dealt with the second one and then bounced back again. So my first question is, how was it different the second time? Was the experience just, you know, the exact same thing, or were there some differences to, obviously I know that the event itself was different, but were there differences to how you processed it or how it affected you?
Yeah, I think there's twofold. One, I was more mature this time. And the second time, it wasn't my fault. The first time, it was my bad decisions. I had nothing to do with Bear Stearns and Countrywide and all the corruption that went on involved with that. So it was just stroke of bad luck. I mean, it wasn't my fault. So that, I think, helped a lot with it. And then again, networking. I had built such a big network of people. Now I'm in Vegas. I've got Utah connections, California connections. I mean, Vegas was very good for building a much larger network, that now when I'm back in Indiana, I'm now kind of a nationwide. I've got hookups with lenders, not just brokers. And so it gave me more opportunities, more options and more of a resume, so that when the Wells Fargo's come calling with a salary job and benefits and kind of that next, what I thought was going to be that next step of security in something I knew.
Right.
You know, I felt like, man, I'm kind of getting into the winner's circle of the mortgage business again, doing it the hard way. So I would say just those 2 things for sure. Just, it's not my fault. That helped a lot.
And what was it? What got you back up? So you get knocked down once, you get back up, you get knocked down again, you still get back up. Again, many people would have a hard time getting back up after one. You did it after 2. I'm very curious to hear you talk about what it is that got you back up on your feet and kept you moving forward.
I had kids. It's my responsibility. I mean, simply, you can't fail when you're a dad and a husband. You know, if you are failing, you figure it out quick. You have to. Humiliation of $1 million+ bankruptcy is nothing like humiliation of having to go home with no food. I mean, I know that's real life for people. And one of the passions that I have now is trying to get to that point where I can help that in a big, big way, because I never saw that as even real. I never let my mind see that as real. Thank God my parents, you know, had very stable jobs and weren't risk takers like me. You know, because it may not have worked out that way, but I never had to worry about eating. You know, the only thing I could even think about griping about, which I never would, was having to do campground visits on spring break in Daytona while all my, you know, ritzy friends got to go to the beach and stay in the hotels. Like, how ignorant was that now to think back? You know, that I had a great life growing up. You know, so I just think it was just that I was just never content with the idea that I'm going to go work for somebody else that makes me not enough money to feed kids and live like I had envisioned me living. It's unacceptable. And the only other option is to do my own thing. So.
Yeah, which that combined with, you mentioned earlier, sort of the risk of not diversifying. And we're going to talk about that a little bit now, because 2010, you open, or you partner with Jack on Brick Road. Sudz Fundraising starts in 2013. Route 40 starts in 2016. Spiritwear starts in 2017. You know, at this point, if I hadn't heard your story, I'd think you were just a glutton for punishment and maybe didn't have enough to do. So,
yeah,
you know, walk me through I guess, you know, if they're different, we can do them individually, but I'm just, what is your mindset as you're going into these businesses and you see that opportunity and you can't walk away without doing something about it? Like, what is it that keeps you starting these businesses?
Do you want what I was thinking then, or what I'm looking back now and seeing?
Let's do both. Let's do what in the moment. What were you thinking, and then what have you learned?
in the moment, I think I was letting my impulsivity and ADD get the best of me, and thinking that, it's deeper than that. I know that now, but at the time I was sitting there thinking that, man, grossing this amount of money. I'm living the way I want to live. I'm helping people in fundraising. I'm helping kids play ball. I'm coaching baseball. Like, I'm bored with this now. Like, Sudz is doing its thing. Like, I've built this business and it's
Right.
ready to rock and roll. Holler, So I got into essential oils and then just kind of got captivated by it. And, being overweight and always battling diets and all that stuff, it opened me up to a whole different thing other than weight loss pills and, things like that.
Right.
One time I was put on a weight loss medication that, I went through about 7 pair of doctors because, it's that stuff that takes fat out of you and you don't feel it coming out. So, I mean, and I had a weight loss surgery to, lose weight. So I've always had that bit of, self-consciousness. And I think that ties to having sometimes a hard time giving credit sometimes when I do things fairly well.
Sure.
I'm easy to be my own worst critic for sure and beat myself up pretty good. But going back at it, I think it was just boredom. And I felt like I was really where I wanted to be with Sudz. And so the essential oils got me. I started getting into that and was coaching a team and was learning a lot. Because again, back to I dig in. And I noticed parents that were, well, hold on, I just skipped one thing. Sudz and soy candles was before that. We were buying soy candles from another lady. And I got gout one day and took home some invoices and things and looked over this one and just got irritated. I was already in pain. I was in a bad mood. And the company that we were working with, it was just, they were a young business and really cool. But at the same time, we're just making some decisions that weren't really making sense for us. And I was really battling that whole, I don't want to not give her this volume that we've been doing because I know it's helping their business, but
Mhm.
this is not helping our business at all. So I got gout, grabbed my laptop, started looking up how to make a soy can. That was a Thursday. And by Monday morning, I called a team meeting and I said, tomorrow there'll be $5,000 worth of equipment and product here. We are now in the soy candle business, everybody. I've read 3 books. So we started making soy candles and I scaled that using Sudz. So Route 40 got the connection with Sudz because we didn't sell a candle or a melt to anybody else really at that point. It was all just through Sudz.
Right.
So we built our product line and I started thinking, this is a win-win. Cool. Essential oils then happened. I'm coaching my son's baseball team, and I noticed this trend of Gatorades and ibuprofen coming to the dugout in travel baseball for arm problems and shoulders and all that.
Mhm.
And that's what they teach. That's what they tell you: ibuprofen and ice. And the more I'm reading, I'm like, ibuprofen's awful for your kidneys. It's awful for this, and we're doing this to 10, 11-year-old kids. Maybe there's a better way with some oils. Next thing you know, I've been using Tiger Balm on my knee a lot, and I'm thinking maybe I can make a natural version of Tiger Balm. Boom, hit Google. Google takes me to Pinterest. 734,000 recipes later, I figured out what all the components were to basically make Tiger Balm. And then a funny story, I had the knee problems. I'm using my new stuff, and I'm loving it. Got it perfected. The kids are using it. Everything's wonderful. And then I went to use the restroom. Totally forgot that I'd used the salve before. Menthol crystals and peppermint in the restroom is just not a good combination. So luckily I had some time free and some irritation, so to speak. And I spent the rest of the day trying to figure out how to turn that into a roll-on. And then that made the new product called Pain Be Gone. And I think you had a version of it that was I shipped down to you. And that's how it all started, was essential oils and the perfect timing of kids putting ibuprofen in their bodies. And I thought, man, for shoulders and arms, I can make that a little better. And then I just started bringing it to the dugout and gave them all a bottle to put in their backpacks. And then other people started wanting it. And then people with arthritis started liking it. It just took off from there.
So there's something about you that you mentioned earlier. You see the world in a different way than a lot of people, and it's starting to become more apparent now. And I would love to hear you talk about how, because so you start Sudz, fundraising has been done. This not you didn't create a new industry there, but how did you? What was the problem that you saw that you just couldn't pass by without solving? I mean, how was what you're doing with Sudz different from what was already there? And why did you feel the need to start that thing?
I didn't realize it at the time, you know. Looking back, I mean, so much of this is just, it's God, it's not me. I mean, I'm just doing what feels right, and I didn't create my feel. So, uh, with that, it was really just, we needed fundraising for the team, and everybody else doing cookie dough and stuff that is just two problems with it. It's not really needed. The value proposition that I'd grown to know in business wasn't right
Mm,
here, and the consumers had just been tricked into, we just, it's basically a donation, but thanks for whatever you just handed me in trade. And I think a lot of that's from some of the generic candy bar type stuff where it's sketchy even looking, you're not even going to eat it. It's just, here's a dollar, kid, just leave me alone. And it's just grown, that's how it is. And I just felt like, this is silly, man. And so somebody introduced this laundry detergent fundraiser idea, and there was a company doing it a couple hours north of us. And as a coach at that point, I was like, anything other than cookie doughs, again, or rolls and all that stuff that now in the natural business, I'm like, man, I'm kind of feeling a conflict here. Like, I'm promoting more healthy behavior, but yet we're selling rolls, butter, and pastries and, and all
right.
this stuff that people really shouldn't be doing. And so we did it as a team, and it went gangbusters. I mean, our parents loved the idea because they were being able to sell something that people actually saw some value in.
Right.
And that staple product of the 5-gallon laundry detergent, to my knowledge, is the first product that I've ever run across that gave the end consumer a reduction in cost over the overall cost that they use with a quality equivalent product. So instinctively, I was like, hold on, we're on to something here. And magically it happened. I was looking for confirmation of that before taking this. At this time, I'm rock and rolling with Brick Road Media, and I mean, coaching a baseball team and in a new career with no mortgage hassle. I'm loving this. So I was very skeptical about switching that up. But one day I saw 3 Facebook posts, and it was about 3 months after we had done our thing. And then I had an overload of calls coming from parents. Hey, I'm getting calls from all these people that are wanting this laundry detergent. Are we able to do that again? I'm like, oh, I don't know why not. I'm like, we want to play tournaments, buy the nice uniforms, buy batting cages. I mean, we need money for this. So yeah, if y'all can sell it, let's see what we can do. But I knew there were some problems in the game because it took an extremely long time to get the product. We had a lot of customer service issues. And I'm
Mm,
thinking, of course, by this point, even team scalability, there's some bottlenecks that need to be addressed. So I called the company again, and they're like, yeah, man, we'll try to fix this, fix that. Well, they didn't really fix much. And it became apparent that if we were going to do this again, we made it through that nightmare, but there would not be another order that way again. So I got on Google, and you know what happens when I get on Google. um, I found, it was a lot harder than I thought, but I found the factory that this company was using. And I said, well, what does it take to get into this? And he goes, well, you got to be a business and wholesale. We don't sell to teams like that. I said, okay, state of Indiana, $95, Sudz Fundraising. So it sounded like laundry detergent to me. So I designed a quick little logo and filled out all the paperwork, and they said, okay, yep, you're approved, wholesale vendor. So see, I've always been in the service industry. I've never dealt with product before. So here I am like a complete rookie. Like I didn't know what you're talking about, EI, or not the EIN, but the sales tax number. And I'm like, what are you
right.
talking about? So yeah, that's kind of what did that. And the first order, it was just like, hey man, we've got to do this as a team kind of thing or whatever. But the team got all the profit for it. And then my team mom at the time was a big exec at a healthcare place in Indy, and she, looked over at me, and I kind of looked at her and was like, "Is this a business opportunity? What do you got going on in the next few months?" And she's like, "I was thinking, I was getting ready to read your mind," and I was like, "Cool." So we partnered up on that, and then she got a big promotion and said, "Hey, man, if you just give me what I've got in this out, you've done it all. You and the ex-wife now was kind of working for us part-time, and she goes, you guys have done all this. Just give me back what I got in it, and you can have it." I'm like, okay, because at that point we're kind of doing about 80 grand a year, and all of our buddies that we play against, we're giving them the opportunity, who are thankful for no wrapping paper and cookie dough, and it was like, this is
Nice.
just a win-win everywhere. And so I just put the fundraising thing and the value proposition, twisted that up a little bit, and then added my digital marketing to it. See, back then when we first started this, there was a few big players online with, fundraising.com and some of those, but around here, it was just order forms and local stuff, raffle tickets and that kind of thing. And so when I learned that we could take this order form and really make this a process, make this a program, and then I can also get on Google and have pay-per-click with some cool headlines and Facebook ads that get me in other states. Just have to solve some, shipping issues with heavy products, and we could scale this because there's only so many organizations that want to use your fundraiser in a certain area.
Right.
So you can only grow so big before you've got some real logistical problems here. And once we got to figuring that out, we combined the internet and the logistics, and magic started to happen.
Yeah. So you solve that problem, create a business around it. And it sounds like Route 40 wasn't created because of Pain Be Gone, was it? Or was that sort of the genesis of that whole thing?
Route 40 was the candles first.
Okay.
And we just liked Route 40 because it was the highway right up the street. So we just thought, yeah, Route 40 kind of sounds cool. And we wanted to take like a little nostalgic kind of look to our candles and kind of be like the, the pickers guy, that Americana theme sort of thing.
Right.
So we kind of went rustic with it and thought Route 40 kind of fit into that. There's a lot of history on this road. So we kind of went with that, and it was Route 40 Candle at first. And then we just added on Route 40 Wellness, or actually it's called Route 40 Home and Wellness. Our website's route40wellness.com. And so it was kind of set up as two companies. And then we just blended the candles at that point into the wellness, but candles still remained there. It was just another one of those projects that just Jeremy got sidetracked and went to something else before he really got closure on really what we were going to do there. So.
Yeah. And then you have Spiritwear in 2017. And so what I would love to hear you talk about is, at this point you're doing, at any of these points, you're doing so many things, right? So what is the discussion in your mind about whether or not this project is worth your time and energy? Because for a lot of these, you put a lot of effort in up front before you were really making any money off of it. So what is that conversation like in your mind? Because I know for most people, there's always that struggle between, do I build a side hustle if it's going to cost me time with my family and time to focus on it's just, there's always that trade-off, right? Of if I want to get into this project, I'm going to have to give up something else, and everybody has to make that decision on their own. So I'm just curious to hear you talk about how you made that decision, because you just kept investing and pouring yourself into these other projects.
I think it was, looking back, it was both my dream, and that was one of the things I aligned with, my wife's with, is that none of us had a poverty dream. We wanted something more. And they both are totally different, but my ex is really good with the kids. She wasn't as career minded or all that. She really found a good place, I think, maybe at home doing those things and making sure all the stuff was being done at home while I was out doing the grind, kind of 50 style mentality sort of.
Right.
And it fit, for that time frame, it fit. And now Kelly is entrepreneuristic and converted from kind of an employer type mindset, and came on board to help me again, and gave 2 years of her life that was absolutely miserable, which we can get to, trying to help me juggle this nightmare that I'd put myself into. Once Spiritwear came on, that was when it was like, okay, the cup has runneth over and I'm too far in to get out, and have no idea where I'm going to go again, because I took the diversification project a little too far.
So I'd love to share that wisdom with people, because this is a real challenge for anybody, and especially for entrepreneurs. It's a very addicting lifestyle in the sense that, like you were saying, once you recognize I can get paid for giving value to people, and if I do it really well, there's no limit to how much I can be paid. It's very tempting to find a lot more ways to give value, and you end up getting in a bunch of projects and spreading yourself thin. And that's like, this is not a Jeremy thing. This is an entrepreneur thing, right? We all struggle with this to some degree. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, I'd love to hear you share what you've learned and how you think about it now, so that somebody who's maybe newer in their entrepreneurial journey might be able to learn from that perspective.
I think it's two things. I'm finding that balance is the theme word that really has to take a higher priority, in everything, balance in everything. And that diversification is kind of a synonym to me of balance, So I think that's the big lesson that I'm really trying to learn right now. And it's balance for me too, because I devalue myself when I continue to put myself in these projects where I'm the only one that has the the knowledge base to do this.
Right.
And you know, I've built this side of it too far too fast, and now I've got to build the foundation. You know, I'm putting the roof on before I let the concrete dry.
Right.
And that's definitely something that I'm now learning, even late in the entrepreneurial life, so to speak. You know, I should have learned this a little bit earlier, but I'm seeking that balance and finding, um, I guess when I talk about that balance, it's balance with personal time, putting me first too, sometimes putting wife and kids in a different place, not just constant hustle and grind. So I guess look at it like that teeter totter. I'm that type of guy that learns the hard way, has to rough up against it. I'm not one that wants to read a book first. I'd rather go figure it out and then write the book. And some of that's good, but some of that can be a real detriment too. So I think right now I'm just seeking that balance to where I can find true happiness and keep these businesses running and prospering and helping people, because now finally they're all clicking together. Well, this is pre-COVID. um, they're all finally starting to, it was almost like God's plan is finally coming to fruition that I never saw, because all I was seeing through all this was just, how did I do this again? How am I going to get out of this mess again? And you know, it's kind of like that roller coaster when you might make 100 decisions, and if 50 of them are good, you're probably going to be pretty good. Well, I was going through the stage where I'd made a lot of great decisions and they worked well, and I didn't do the smart things with that that money, um, or the wisdom that I was gaining, really. And then here I am getting the short end of the 50. It all evens out in the end, but I'm going through this season that is not on the, you know, you're betting red every time and it's black every time. It's part of it now. And I know that now. But at the time, I mean, you know, I didn't have the mindset training and the things I do now to get the bigger picture. I was like, I'm just the most unlucky guy in the world. And no, I've just got a lot of bad habits and a lot of things that I need to work on. But I wasn't ready to tell myself that at the point. So now it's just seeking that balance, and it's even harder now with the COVID flip. But you know, um, that's where we're kind of at. Well, I think we're in a timeline that I'm jumping all the way to yesterday. We're
No,
still
no,
back here.
no, it's perfect. And trust me, I'll make sure we stay on track because I have so many questions
Cool,
about this.
cool, yeah, yeah.
So I want to talk specifically about you mentioned the 2 years where your wife's involved, and I don't know if you were both miserable, but you said she was miserable. And I know from previous conversations we've had that you guys definitely had a rough patch there. What I want to flesh out for people is, if you can, what were like the 1 to 3 things that were really causing you pain? I mean, what were the issues you were having that you were struggling against? And then I would love to hear, you know, how you guys have been able to move through that and solve those problems, personally, professionally, whatever you want to talk about.
Um, the first thing that I needed was the yin to my yang professionally. I had found it absolutely in my personal life with her, and it was just natural because, you know, looking back, I think I probably did some manipulating that I shouldn't have done. But my wife will be the first to tell you, you know, that she sometimes can have a bit of a Budweiser taste on a Milwaukee's Best kind of realistic budget. And you know, she was talked into leaving a job of 14 years to come, what I thought was, do what you're doing for him, but do it for our family business so that we can achieve these goals, right? Um, and I had kind of got blinded from what I thought could be what it was, and I forgot to see if that was really what she wanted to do. And I think I was persistent enough that I just got her talked into it. And I had what I thought was the plan. But then during that 3 weeks that she gave as notice, things had completely changed and it evolved into a goofy thing. And what she was originally going to come over to help with, there was another priority. And instead of communicating that like I probably should have, I thought she just already had that entrepreneur mindset. Not sure how she would have gotten it, but it to me, that's like, you see the flame and you go with the hose. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I know I told you you're going to do HR and finance and QuickBooks and all that, but right now I need help over here getting these shirts and these orders out. Like, come help me pre-treat shirts at this new Spiritwear debacle. And she was like, okay. And so she became torn. Like, do I help my husband or do I do what I mean, I just left a job of 14 years. And let me tell you, this girl does not like change in anything. So getting her to do this, like, really put me up there with the, Jordan Belfort's in the sales guy category, but not really for the best reasons, probably at
Right.
this point. So now it was like, it's too late to go back. And I'm already about an 80%, 90% frustrated with life in work because of nothing going right for so long after that Spiritwear decision. That's where I finally felt that I'm too far in to go back. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. And normally I'm the one and everybody looks to for all the guidance answers. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And, I even talked to my right hand man, Billy, and I'm like, Billy, what are we going to do? And he goes, and I'll never forget, he goes, you're going to figure it out like you always do, like you always have. And he just said it with such a calmness that it was like, this dude's like been a really good friend for a long time. He's been with Sudz since the beginning, him and his wife. And I'm just like, well, if Billy believes in me, why shouldn't I? And okay, so just got right back to it and was like, I know how to try to fix this with Kelly. And it was, it wasn't all right at the beginning, but we started working on it. We went back, we went to our therapist and was like, hey, we normally come here for, we came there for kind of premarital things because neither one of us have another crappy relationship. So, or
Right.
an ending to a crappy relationship. So we agreed to do that. And we were like, hey, why can't we go for business? So we went and was like, help us through this business, doc. She thinks this and I think this, and you're now our mediator. So we went through a little bit of that and learned some things, and it's still a work in progress, man. So, because she stemmed off and opened her own boutique. So she is really doing the entrepreneur thing now. And it's cool now to see it. And we're way better where we are now, but it's a heck of a long trip
Yeah, I would
there.
hope so. Cause you guys just, she started another project. So you guys are either
Yeah.
gluttons for punishment or yeah, you managed to solve some of the problems. So what was, how did you guys get to, you mentioned the therapy, and I'm curious,
hmm
what were some of the other things that you applied to your business that, got you to a place where you could operate with a little bit more sanity and also gave you enough bandwidth where you thought, yeah, like let's totally open this boutique for you.
I had to learn a lot about the faults of myself because I was used to it being everybody else's fault. And it's a humbling thing to say, no, it wasn't that was a bad hire necessarily. I brought him into a crappy foundational situation. So then I started battling man, I've done this before. Why did I do this again? I'm not learning from these mistakes. I'm making the same ones and I'm letting impulsivity not let me, and this crazy grind and this crazy, I don't even have a vision board at this point. Like, I don't even, what am I even doing this for? I still don't even understand it. Right. And but I'm disappointed in myself for making the same mistakes because now I know I'm just creating insanity. And that was something I didn't believe in. So I had to just really check myself. And at that point, I realized at that point I was being just an absolute ass to my wife. And I mean, just beating her up. My frustrations and my faults and my problems were just absolutely being shifted to her. And she's a strong, strong person, but man, anybody gets pounded too much, they're going to break. And it just got to that point where both of us were miserable and unhappy. And I finally realized it was me. And so I was like, you keep doing you for a minute because it's not you. Give me a second. Let me delve into this. So I went to Doc and started just dealing with the therapy myself because I had sort of self-diagnosed without his help from the break that we had from it that it wasn't Kelly this time. It wasn't even an us thing. I needed to go to him myself. And then between that and John, a lot of work mindset wise and his help, I finally started figuring out and connecting some of those dots on how to communicate better, and start putting things together process wise and bottleneck wise to just start chipping away at it, man. It's an iceberg and we're turning the thing as fast as we can and dumping water. But along the way, we kept painting the boat too and, kept trying to keep it maintained. And a lot of that was operational things, HR policies that we never had, getting
Mhm.
everybody on payroll and, trying to get Kelly to that role that she originally was supposed to have.
So yeah, you've talked about this some with the businesses that you were building. I would love to hear, and you even mentioned the word balance earlier, but I've come to realize I've gotten older that balance is kind of a myth. The word I like to use for it is more proportion. That
hmm
sometimes my family is going to take more of my time, sometimes my work is going to take more of my time, sometimes I need to take more of my time, but it's never always 5%, 5%, 5% across the board, right? So you know, running 19 companies and obviously having your wife and managing employees and doing all those things. I mean, I'm just curious how you think about that kind of balance in your life, and you know, what you think, what it takes for you to make that work and keep everything going.
Well, I think I related a lot to a carousel, you know, kind of probably like you're saying, you know, some days it's this business or this thing, and marketing's the top thing, and then over here, and then it's just kind of up and down. And the song's not nearly the same, but the action seems to kind of be. But it's going at a roller coaster speed. So I guess I kind of compare it a little bit analogy wise, like a kind of like the King's Island or something, you know, like Six Flags. Um, but how to do it is I'm still balancing. I'm still trying to figure it out, because I'm one that doesn't crave a lot of discipline when it comes to repetitive things. I'm not a routine guy. I'm just an ADD guy in a routine, just sort of oil and vinegar or oil and water trying to mix, you know?
Right.
And so, you know, I've been with John a couple of years, and I mean, it's still the weekly battle. And right now the battle is, well, before, you know, right now, but I was finally starting to get the vision. Like, I went through these so fast that they didn't have business plans, they didn't have marketing plans, they didn't have
Right.
budgets. They were just, hell yeah, let's do it. You know, and that's one of the things that I've realized, that to get where I really want to get, and to be able to help as many people as I really want to be able to help, and the impact I think I can do, I've got to start making bigger decisions, because this isn't about, you know, it's a bigger picture now. You know, it's a bigger vision, that I'm finally getting, and I'm finally seeing the parallels of all these businesses, and it's kind of arm tingling. You know, it's like the hair on my arm stands up when I think about it, because I wasn't consciously doing any of this, but I was fighting like heck. That's the only thing I'll take credit for, is I didn't give up. And there was many times I probably could have really considered it and not felt bad about it. But something just kept me driving, man. And there's a really cool story with I don't know where you want to start with Spiritwear, but I can give you just a cliff note on the starting and
Sure.
why, because I think it's kind of important. One of the things I've always been challenged with is I hate telling people no, and it's just necessary sometimes. I wasn't in a place to start another business, but Jeremy's impulsivity and optimism sometimes can get him in trouble. Route 40 wasn't too bad, because the candle thing was an immediate fit. So it became the foundation, even without a plan. It was just such a no-brainer. The pain be gone and all that didn't matter. It was my little fun project. There was hardly any expense in it at that time. And we're doing it at Sudz. So Route 40 has zero overhead. It's a passion project, really, more than anything. Spiritwear came up from a mom that I was coaching her daughter, and I mean, phenom daughter, playing baseball. And that was the cool part. And
Yeah.
she was kicking all the boys' butts. And her mom came to me and says, I have an older daughter who does amazing work with vinyl stuff and the cricket and all that. Would you take a look at it? And she's kind of wanting to maybe do her own business, but, you know, doesn't know anything about it. And I know you know everything about business. I was like, oh, if you only knew. But sure, I'll sit down and talk to her. Why not? So her and her mom came in. We had a little meeting. She brought a bunch of stuff. And I mean, she did amazing work. And so I said, well, what is this going to take for you to get your business kind of started? And she was just going to do vinyl and all that. And then Jeremy got on Google. So it started off as about $1,000 investment and ended up at about an $87,000 investment in 6 months, living the roller coaster train speed. And then it was like, I'm in a business that I know nothing about, with a partner that had no skin in the game, and was going through a personal time that ended up making her just say, I don't have anything vested and nothing, invested in it. I'm out. I don't want this saga that we're into. And I had nothing to tie her in, and there was nothing I could do. So
Right.
it was either bankrupt the company, which at this point had leveraged Sudz for a lot of financing. So it was kind of like borrowing money from your parents. You can't really file a bankruptcy on them,
Right.
So it was like, okay, well, there's only one way to do this, and it's through the wall. I've checked the over, the under, the rounds. There is none. There's one way through this, and it's through it. And it's through a big, thick wall with no plasma cutter. And Spiritwear had gotten to that point where we had made another decision that was not good on our domino from hell. We had a team meeting, and we were looking at growth strategies. Now that we had all these things, how can we put these things in the Yahtzee cup and come out with a winner? And we prioritized things, and retail was number 5 out of 5, and it had an X through it. And this meeting took place in July, And by November, we were in a 2-year lease on a retail business in a retail building. And to this day, I'm not really certain how and why that was such a great idea. Um, but it ended up working. Where the spiritware problem and the learning lesson I came out of that, other than the business arrangement with just taking on a friend's daughter as a partner with no skin in the game. Again, I don't have that business, experience where somebody else brought me up in that contractual world and here's how the accounting works and the business plan. I learned by doing it the hard way and always have. And so here I'm really in that, okay, I've learned the hard way how really smart it is to have a business plan and a marketing plan. And here I go again, making another bad decision on this. But what I learned was I didn't have a passion for that business at all. So it's even more important to have a plan and the right financing and the right exit strategies, the right corporate structure and all of that, so that if you don't have passion for that business, it's easy to sell it or make it not part of your core business anymore. So just because you like to coach baseball and thought you could do some uniforms and some spiritwear doesn't necessarily make you a good candidate to be the owner of that company. But what really did make sense was I was finding that third diversified wheel that still stuck with the core, which I'm now learning what our core was, and that's to help people, help fundraise, and do that with the same customer base. Now, that Sudz used to only have one revenue source and channel, and then it picked up a second with candles, and then a third with the Route 40 wellness stuff, and now it's got a fourth with the spiritwear because parents all want t-shirts that match that. And I'm like, these are the same customers, right? How can we just not get into something that is this tied together with the same customer? And I just fell in love too much with that. Didn't have the plan on how we were really going to work that with what we already had and how we were going to take over the processing, manufacturing, the whole gamut of something we knew nothing about once that partner left. And let's be real, she wasn't to the level that she needed to be either on that operational end of it. So here I was learning product and inventory and all that from Sudz for the first time. And here I am into a printing business that I know nothing about. And me and Adobe Illustrator is not a good fit. And here, that's the foundation of this whole business. And now I'm relying on outsourcers and everybody else. And that was a very uncomfortable feeling, getting into that business, into a relationship with a printing company that turned out to be kind of a good printer, bad company behind it, bad product behind it. And it cost me thousands and thousands before we finally turned that faucet off. And who actually ended up making the right decision in the call when I was at my very, very lowest was the new kid on the block entrepreneur in the works named Kelly. My wife said, Jeremy, can I just tell you what I think you should do? Keep in mind, I'm not there yet with the whole, I'm willing to listen to anybody. I've got all the answers, right?
Right.
She goes, just turn the printer off. It can't lose you any more money if you're not turning it on. And I was like, what do you mean not turn it on? I got $50,000 invested in this stupid thing. She goes, yeah, and it's going to be 80 if you keep it on. And whatever, I don't know what it was about the simplicity in that tone, but she's like, here's what I'm talking about. You're griping and bitching every day because you're buying all this expensive chemical product and ink and it's all getting wasted. Quit buying it, quit printing the shirts, and just shut it down temporarily until you let this thing with the ink problem and the company that you come home yelling about every night, like, let it all chill out for a little bit. So what? You can't make any money off that, but at least you're not losing because you're not bringing in near as much as you're losing. And I'm like, you're right. So, okay, can you take Spiritwear over? Because I'm at a point where I'm about to have a breakdown. She was like, can I make the decisions? I'm like, you just did. And right then I went upstairs and went back to work on Route 40 and Sudz, and she and the two girls that worked downstairs started putting up this and putting up that and making different shirts and designing things that people wanted. And we were busier than hell before you knew it. So every bit of it goes kudos to Kelly. She cashed out her 401k from her last job and said, here you go, save your company. I mean, who does that?
Right.
In a 2-year, I mean, we've been married 2 years and she
Right.
gave it all. So every bit of it, for where we're at even right now, every bit of it is right there that day. That's the pivotal moment where I finally learned to listen to her. which, every guy's on that quest, right? And every wife wants us to finally do that. Now, I don't do it all the time in every situation, still, of course. But that day, I finally, I don't know what it was. I was like, you're right. And she took it over.
So there's a couple of things I really want to highlight here because I think they're really valuable. One, somebody might look at your story from the outside and see somebody who has all this business experience and you've been working for yourself more or less for 10, 20 years. And it would be very easy for them to see you and just be like, man, that guy knows so much. I'll never know that much. I don't even know if I should get started. And the thing I want to highlight is that you're still figuring it out. And
Oh
that
yeah.
so much of your experience was before you had answers on so many things. Like you talked about, basically running and operating businesses without even understanding business plans and marketing plans and HR and all that, right? Just taking action. But the other side of that, the thing that I think people should take away is that you just take action on things and you take action very quickly. Now, obviously any good thing can be a bad thing. So you don't want to do it to the extent that you've done necessarily, but
Yeah.
the point being, like, you see an opportunity, you think about how you could provide value somewhere, and a couple of days later, you've got more information than 75% of people, and you're taking action on it and making it happen.
Right.
And I think those are two really valuable lessons. And I'd love to. I know we've touched on some of it. I'd love to bring us a little more modern day or current day, because I know you've made a lot of progress and done a lot of things over the last few years. What are some of the challenges that you're still facing that people might not expect you to be facing, or maybe assume wouldn't apply to you because they just think you're like past that or at too high level of a success for that?
Um, oh man, every day is just a new challenge and a new opportunity right now. We made it past the iceberg and actually had record months, January and February and March. And Kelly split off, and we actually, that property got bought out, and we were forced to move within 30 days. And what a blessing that was. We ended up out of all of it, we ended up with 2 retail locations now, Kelly's and the new Spiritwear Sudz that hasn't opened yet. And we reduced our warehouse space, changed up our entire thing at Sudz, and it ended up coming out with like a $40,000 a year net gain.
Wow.
And we have so many more opportunities when this thing ends and we get back to it. And what really finally happened there, and I'll get back to that question just to piece this together, is we found harmony finally in the 4 businesses, and they were all working together now. And it was a clear message to the customers because we finally understood it, how these all 4 work together, and we were able to communicate it finally. And now, right before the COVID thing happened, we were really starting to take some good turns towards bottlenecks and operational processes and flows and that kind of thing, that we hadn't really had time or the organization for before. So give me that question again, because I want to make sure I really detail into what you were getting to.
Yeah, just some of the challenges that you're still facing today that
Okay.
people might, again, because I think we have a tendency to look at what we're doing and see all the mistakes, and look at what other people are doing and see how well they're doing. So I want to sort of
Yeah.
humanize it a little bit by talking about some of the challenges you're still facing, even though you've had this level of success.
Well, right now, the thing that we're facing is we still didn't finish the foundation. We still have processes and operational things and QuickBooks problems and, things that every real business has. Um, I'm training my kids at this new thing. So this is a new cool journey that we're on. But at the end of the day, I'm working with a 17-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, getting ready to be Kelly's stepkid, who's 22 years old. And it's so cool because it's a family thing, but that brings some real challenges, not only family, but we aren't operationally there to where I call it like we need to McDonald's this. We're not even to that part where we're even close to that. And it's even more important now because they're younger people that are coming in. So, that part is a day in, day out juggle. And it's on a very fast paced train right now for us. We should have been. So for me, it's still hard to give myself credit that we got here because it's still not fixed. And now I crave that where I never wanted it before, but I see how daggone valuable that is. So now it's like, I'm frustrated. I want to get that structure down. So that's our real struggle. Biggest one right now, is just that, having everything with flows and systems, SOPs, the Raul stuff. I'm still too Johnny Andrews. We need to get to roll. Johnny's the man at that, and I'm not there yet. So that's just that balance still, finding me time. That's something really big on my plate right now. Which brings us to right now, modern day COVID. When that all started happening, man, I didn't see it coming. I don't know. I was just busy, just staying busy. And NBA shut down. Who cares? I don't watch NBA. I just wasn't putting it all together at that time. I was so
Right.
laser focused on the turnaround, and it was addicting. We finally are back to out of the scared to death zone um, that we've been trying to pull out of this mess. And I just got tunnel vision, and then all of a sudden, boom, the 15th of March hit, and it was like, schools are canceled. What? The kids are coming home? What do you mean? Okay, homeschooling. What are you even talking about here? And then by the 17th, it was like, what are we going to do? Because every one of our teams and youth sports organizations is on pause, and we don't have any ability to pause the utilities and the bills and everything else like everybody else is facing too. So that became that moment where it was like, oh boy, this feels real familiar. The back and your wall starts tickling with the wall again. And it's like, man, here we go. And so I was really, really tuning up for some personal time to really get into some projects, man. One of them being your site, one of them being Raul's book, and some achiever stuff that's on this awesome list that I need to get to. And I thought, hey, the world's putting a stop to this, and it's not me doing it. Finally, I get a staycation. Finally, I get some me time that I just won't take myself when my back's against the wall.
Hmm.
I still haven't got there yet, man. I know John hits me every other week about it, and I'm just stubborn, I guess, but I'm still trying to find that me time. And I thought, here we go. COVID has given me some me time that I desperately needed to do. And then the reality hit that I was like, me time? No, feed kid time. Yes. This is going to be, I'd listened to about 5 minutes of some things that were going on. I was like, immediately just went back into survival dad mode. And I know what that felt like. Fortunately, now I have felt that so many times in my history. I'm glad that I've done that grind now. Now thinking back at it, I'm prepared for this now.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that. I do want to circle back real quick. You
Hmm.
mentioned being really stubborn, and it's come up a couple of times, just putting your head down and doing the hard things. But you also mentioned something which I think is interesting, that at some point you finally started to crave or see the value in structure.
Yeah.
And I'm super curious, with that being, just not have been your nature necessarily for so long. Like, what was there like a singular event or something where you finally just threw up your hands and were like, that I see the value, I need it? Or was it kind of a cumulative thing over time? I mean, how did you finally, get over that hill to say, all right, I'm willing to accept this thing that I've been resisting for a long time?
Oh, where did this happen? I mean, this is a tough one because I thought I was doing that with Kelly when she was coming over from Lingle, but I
Right.
totally misread that situation. Both of us did. So we had to save our business partnership and our relationship because the yin to the yang was not near what neither of us thought it was going to be. And it was because I wasn't ready for her at all. I hadn't had any structure for a structured person coming from a 14-year structured position. Oh my gosh, that was I should have seen that coming. So really, I don't know if it was at that point really, but um, I think there's been several different times along since then that I can kind of pick up on that and see that was. I think they all add together to finally get that moment where you're like, okay, and when it all kind of culminated together to Raul when I got on the phone with Raul and he made it look so simple and he just broke through. It was like I was reading Spanish for 20 years and he put it in English for me. And the guy's a ninja, with putting those processes and bottlenecks and identifying them. And I've learned a ton from him over the last 6 months, and we're employing more and more and more of it the more time I get freed up to do it. Because one of the things that I definitely glazed over, and I just, since we're on Real Talk Radio here, when you don't have a lot of money and you don't have a lot of credit because you destroyed it in bankruptcy, let's just be real. These banks don't offer you anything. And you have to have money to make money. And when you put yourself in a situation where you've got X amount of dollars going out and it's, 15 times anybody else that that's a real wicked spot when you're having to take nothing but start over with what little you've got. And then you're rolling profits into building blocks without capital. Going back, the biggest thing I've consistently screwed up is not having a capital plan that's got some pitfalls in it along the way, that's not 100% funded by me or family or something. I always feel like I'm always having to go out and get that hard money loan to make one of these ideas happen.
Mm-hmm.
And to a certain extent, some that's probably protected me from some other problems, but in the flip side, it's a real problem that people need to come together and figure out a solution for. Because in my personal situation, since my bankruptcy and divorce situation, I haven't missed a payment or been 30 days late in 8 years. But I couldn't go borrow $50,000 to refinance a condo. But I haven't missed a payment on nothing.
Right.
I'm the model citizen, but because we've let this get to a computer age where people and decisions aren't made that way, there's a lot of things that aren't coming out that could, purely because of that. And when I get there, that's going to be one of the big things that I go on a mission, and that's providing funding for small businesses that have that grind, because that's what it takes. With the right tools and the right connections, somebody's grind, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, and I'd like to talk about that grind, because it seems to me that that's a lot of what you've been doing lately. And I've been able to see firsthand a lot of the pivot that you've made during COVID. And I think you downplayed a lot, but for anybody listening, I want you to just imagine somebody in their dining room with all of the machines and everything up to produce lotion and hand sanitizer and all these other things that are typically made in a factory somewhere. Jeremy not only has the knowledge and skills, but he has all the equipment right in his house to just be able to turn out these products. So I'd love to hear you talk about the pivot for COVID and why you made the decision to go the direction you did and how you've ended up there.
I think one of the skill sets that I've always been pretty confident in is my speed for action. I think quick, I act quick. And I've just been now looking back, a 30-year training for that quick thinking. And it hit me that schools are closed. The first thought was, those kids, those lucky little kids. And then it was like, but wait a minute, Sudz is really tied heavily to schools. Oh crap, use sports, because we're doing uniforms now. So we're just knee deep in customers' uniforms, Spiritwear. I mean, when this happened, we had finally got there. The plan was working. Sudz Fundraising was coming in. Uniforms were getting bought. Spiritwear. It was like, thank God we finally did this. And that was like, oh crap, that all is now on pause. Like, that is not going to be a thing. These people will not need fundraising if they don't have a season or uniforms or anything else. So it was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So I went over to the warehouse and tried to pull myself together a little bit, because I kind of had a bit of a moment. And I looked around and saw alcohol. And I saw 2 gallons of aloe vera gel. And I was like, there's like this homemade sanitizer thing that I saw in this aromatherapy textbook for the class I'm still in. So I went back to the other office, and I'm like, imagine, running through this paper, because I'm feeling the energy now. I'm like, dude, sanitizer's hot right now. Like, if I can make this stuff, this just may be how we eat. Because, at this point, I'm like 85% of our revenue for 4 businesses is just shut down, off, over. So I'm like, at least, I won't be able to pay any bills. I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to have those conversations. But at least I won't miss out on feeding kids, making sure we can eat and pay house payments and things like that, hopefully. So I ran back to the warehouse again, because I'm like, okay, I have the stuff to make this. Essential oils, everything, to make a really killer hand sanitizer, I thought. What am I going to put it in? So I went back, and we had 2 great big boxes of lotion bottles that we never did use back in those research and development crazy days. Because Jeremy wouldn't buy anything in an 8-pack. I had to buy 8 skids of it, because I'm going to scale this to the point of, worldwide on everything. So luckily this time it finally paid off, because I had way more of stuff that I ever would have dreamed. It was going to get thrown away in the next 6 months. Expiration dates were coming. and I was getting into that non-hoard mode. So I'm like, those and that, and that's a product. So I got on my Maestro little label designer real quick, and I slapped on a label, hand sanitizer, and put it out there on Facebook. And it went from there. We put it all together. It had a great smell and it made your hands feel awesome. And I'm like, this is killer. And then there was 2 comments on a Facebook post that said, does it carry 60% alcohol? And I was like, well, you know what? I probably ought to look into that. The product's 47 hours old right now. I'm not sure. So we went back and figured out that, and we're very transparent the whole time. Like, we are not chemists. We do not know what we're doing, but we do know essential oils. And if you believe in those like we do, we believe the viral fighting capabilities of these oils that we blended together, that is going to give you a really good shot against this unknown bug that I found out about, a day ago. So, we put it out there and everybody was like, hey, we don't care. It's something and the stores don't have it, so we'll buy yours. And we just kept it going. And I just kept, thinking guerrilla marketing, style here, because I don't have pay-per-click money anymore. I don't have what I'm accustomed to. So I have to go back to the unmarketing book and the guerrilla strategies and think about how I can just do some joint venture networking and social media to get this out. And it started going gangbusters. Everything's going great. And then, of course, just like in the CBD day, Facebook wants to throttle and cut you off, and they kicked me off for a couple of days while I guess it was Facebook jail. I find it common now. I've talked to a few people. I didn't know that it was a common thing, but it happened with CBD too. As soon as we started getting some really, really good momentum there, Facebook throttle. What's the learning lesson is you can't rely on Facebook for everything. You've got to have a better foundation than just social media and just Facebook.
For sure.
But back to the sanitizer thing. So after our penalty box, that gave me a couple of days to start networking around, and we had hooked up with a local Do It Best Center, and that gave me the time to get with those guys and kind of let's figure how we can scale this thing. And they came up with a great idea, talked to the right people, and then it was 2,000 bottles, 950 bottles, 450 bottles, and I'm like, we're dipping this stuff out of a pitcher and pouring it into a funnel, like, and trying to figure out this 62% recipe that everybody kind of wants. And I wanted to have that extra 2% above the CDC's recommendation, just because I'm not a chemist. I want to play from a little bit of careful concern here. And that's when I posted that post that you were so awesome to reply to. And you and Raul got into the who can make a calculator for me fastest. And so thankful for that, because that's what I've used the whole time to evolve it from that recipe to the 60%. And then it was the 70% that everybody wanted. So I hope this slows down, because 99% isopropyl alcohol is not fun to work with. And if people keep this going, they're going to want the best of the best. And they're not going to be happy with what that does to your skin. So, so we ended up coming up with the World Health Organization formula. Felt like, hey, that's 5% over the 70. That covers us from any kind of chemical standpoint. But we changed it a little bit because Jeremy just has to be Jeremy. I've got to be me. And so I looked at the recipe and I thought, glycerin for moisturizing? I'm like, I've never seen in any textbook, or I've never seen my wife or any woman I've ever known go look for a bottle of glycerin. So why and how that was chosen, I don't know. But I've got these oils that were in the first recipe. So back to Google, I'm on a quest to figure out how to mix these things together and come up with my own little version of that moisturizing side of the formula. And there it was, boom, the WHO with Route 40 blend. So the product is there and the pivot's there. And now we're trying to figure out supply and demand. My employees are on furlough. They've had to go find other jobs because unemployment didn't kick in for them like it was supposed to before they were forced to go find something else. And so I'm left with thousands of bottles of an inquiry, isopropyl market that was like the toilet bowl or the toilet paper market 2-3 weeks ago on the consumer side.
Right.
And I have me, Billy, and my wife. Okay, problem again. How do we do this? I have kids, and this is a great learning lesson where they can really, really finally earn their keep, so to speak. And so how can we make fun with this? How can we make this a learning lesson and save our business and survive it and come out more united as a family? Because as a dad that went through a divorce, I don't know that you ever lose that little bit of guilt about not being able to spend every single day with your kids while they're young.
Right.
And so, for me, this was just one of those, I get to spend more time with them when they're with their mom. And I get to spend more time with them now when, I'm at work now where I didn't before. And they're coming out with wisdom that they wouldn't ever be able to do. And
Right.
seeing it right now, like this is a crazy time for everybody. And so it just continued to evolve into this win-win-win, everybody's winning here. And so I figured out the demand problem was going to be a real issue. So I sketched out something, and by no means I'm the last guy on earth you'd want to mechanically fix something. Or I at one point even told my dad back in the day, he said, man, come and pay attention, because he's real handy and can fix everything. And I'm like, Dad, and this is back in my mortgage cocky days, I said, Dad, I got 2 books for anything I'm ever going to need, and I have no interest in doing that. He goes, books? What are you talking about? I go, yeah, a yellow book and a checkbook. I'm not wanting to try to learn how to fix a toilet. Boy, was that a bad decision. But anyway, so thank God my son's not like that. But for whatever reason, I'm a fixer, man. I figure stuff out. I don't know how sometimes, but I evolve it, and I just use common sense and practical things to me. So I went and I thought, what do I have here that I can make stuff in more quantity, bigger demand, more quantity? How can I get more out of this? Because I'm dealing with a staff that's new and young and no McDonaldizing, and
And a few thousand
so
orders.
yeah, and I've got demand coming out the rear end if I can do it. But they're not going to wait 6 weeks for me to produce 2,000 bottles, right?
Right.
So I draw out a sketch, and it was using a 42 quart mixer that we were already using, a big stainless pot, and then the Pain Be Gone thing that we make it in was a 7-gallon stainless pot, but it had a valve and it had some plumbing that I didn't even know what it was, but I've come to find out it was a 1/2 inch thread or 1/2 inch whatever. So I sketched this out and wrote down what it was and took it over to Gilman's, our partner in this, and said, hey, I need some plumbing stuff. Help me out. And Alan and Dwayne said, come over here with this sketch. And we went to the garden center and came out with Y adapters and this piece and hose clamps. And they took my sketch and pretty much put all the pieces that would make it work. And we built a little 2-hose assembly right there in the store. Spent about $85 and came back and put it all together. And for the first time, I think in history that I can remember, it all worked the first time. I mean, it just worked absolutely perfectly. And so we realized there was a couple little flaws in it. We fixed it, and then we evolved it one step further the next night using a 32-gallon trash can. Because we actually got another sanitizer product, which is what they use to clean out a lot of big mixing tanks, and they use it to sanitize stuff in restaurants and hospitals and things. So I was like, hey, we can keep this thing clean as a whistle, and we can make 30 gallons at a time now. So I went back to Gilman's, bought the trash can, bought the sump pump, and now we have a sump pump pumping it up into a blender or another pot, and then going down into this, which shoots it out of 2 tubes. So we went from making 200 a day to 220 an hour with 4 people at one time making it. And that's bottling it, labeling it, capping it, boxing it, and casing it. And it's 100% run by the kids now. So short of the sales coming in and putting it in invoicing, I put the order into the sanitizer area, and Brennan's the little team lead, and he runs the show now. So it's
Awesome.
it's kind of cool. Yeah, it's really cool how it all kind of came out. So now we're just dealing with kind of the next toilet paper problem, and that's sprayers and caps and bottles. So it's, we're not definitely out of the woods, but we've made a commitment now to keep the sanitizer around. It's going to be a staple product with Sudz and the new pivot that we're doing here locally, to now get it back on the map and working now that Route 40's kind of got a new vision, and just, kind of one day at a time, and dealing with, this is all new, man. This is like a new business, literally within 45 days. So I wasn't in the chemical market that much. Had a few relationships from a harebrained idea to make our own laundry detergent several years ago, trying to scale the operational end of that, but decided, thank God, that was not a good idea, and didn't do that. So, but I had the contacts. And so we started buying the raw material. It started at the dollar store, buying the other 2 things that made the homemade version. Then I went to, again, the WHO, and now we're buying in drums. And, so literally in 45 days to go from 16-ounce bottles to pumping out drum. I mean, I've never bought an oil drum. of anything before. I didn't even know how to open the thing, so I had to figure out the tools, and there was a pump for it that the local hardware store had. I'm learning all this on the fly and who and what and how it all works. But I wouldn't be able to do this right now if it wouldn't have been for all of those hardships and all of those lessons. I mean, now come to find out I've been in a 30-year training for how to pivot in a really, really screwed up time. And not only how to do it myself for my family, but able to throw out some tips and help some other business with some ideas and things that have helped them stay in business too, that's just cool as heck to be able to brainstorm, throw out some ideas that save somebody else. So it's kind of opened some pictures and some doors as to maybe even what I want to do down the road, which is connecting me to visions and legacies and things that, I haven't had time to even consider, or probably had even the confidence to think I was worthy of, to be honest. So this has just been a kind of like seeing God's plan finally unveil, and through that, even, getting a better relationship in there spiritually too. Thanks to John and just all the things, all the people, everything that's come to this. It's just super exciting to see where this goes.
And it's been a lot of fun for me to watch as well, being able to see that firsthand. And I will say this, it's an unpaid endorsement, I guess, unless you count the free hand sanitizer he sent to me, but the stuff really is unbelievable. I mean, as far as hand sanitizers go, it does make your hands actually feel softer. It still smells good. I mean, it's got all the benefits, right? So it's pretty incredible stuff. But I love what you said about being in a 30-year training, because I think that's such a valuable perspective that honestly, I think all successful people eventually adopt, where you start to realize that when you're faced with challenges and struggles, that it's actually for your own benefit, for something down the road that you don't even know you're going to encounter yet.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And if nothing else, it just makes you a happier person, right? When you're able to face a challenge like you have with this pivot, losing all your revenue, having to let your employees go, it would be very easy to do what a lot of people have done and to drink more alcohol and play, be on Netflix more and to just really kind of get mired in how bad the situation is. But instead, you've taken all the training you've had from all the hardships you faced, and you turned it into a really positive thing for you, for other businesses, for communities. I mean, it's so important. And I love everything about that story. You've mentioned it a couple of times, and you said specifically about Sudz that, now that you've really gotten tight on what the business is about, a big part of that is giving value. And I'd love to hear you talk about how you think about impact and contribution. And you mentioned legacies. I'm just curious to hear, if that's a conscious thought for you on a regular basis with how you interact with people, and really, how that comes into why you do what you do and how you do what you do.
I think the thought of a kid not being able to play baseball or softball or something that he's passionate about because of things out of his control financially has sickened me, since even knowing that was there when Sudz started. So it was like knowing how much I, love to give to my kids and think I'm a pretty good dad and love coaching and the sports aspect of it. That was such a big part of me. It was like, now I'm able to parlay that with business and make a great living for myself, which parlays into all these other things, but at the same time, be able to sleep at night. I would never be able to do that in the mortgage business. I wasn't helping anybody but Wall Street at the end of the day. But now I'm making an impact locally and nationally, nationally with the sanitizer, getting messages from people saying great things about it. And they're in New York City working in the hospital. Like, that was like a, ooh, kind of feeling, like that's when you kind of got to start giving yourself a little credit for making an impact. And, now it's just like, I want to get the things done that need to be done with these businesses so that I can continue and finish that journey wherever that leads with those businesses, because I think I have a bigger purpose that I'm going to work with John on and get these businesses to wherever they're going to go that doesn't take the day in, day out of me, so that I can figure out what that next chapter is to making a bigger impact with things for people, because I'm being enlightened to the fact that there's a lot of people that don't have the playbook on how to hustle like this. And I just took it as something I just had that everybody had, but that's not necessarily the case I'm finding. So how cool is it that I could actually maybe tell a story to help somebody else out with all of this, paid journey of school of hard knocks, no diplomas, but school of hard knocks. And I think there's people that can resonate with that now. So I'm excited to get what I've always wanted to get done, and then let those continue to work in the communities, helping everybody and then put me on more of a journey where I can help other businesses and just help more people in a bigger sense. Because, one thing that we all know is we're on a timeline that none of us know when it ends. So I've always lived by, and the next tattoo will have Carpe Diem on it, because that's how I really live. I know nothing's given to us and nothing's promised tomorrow. So anytime I don't have that exhausted feeling at the end of the day, I kind of feel like I'm doing a disservice to my legacy, a disservice to the inheritance that I could leave my kids, not only in financial, but in, this is part of their inheritance too. They're learning right now whether they want to be an entrepreneur or not. Well, there's only two choices. You either work for yourself or you work for somebody else. So you get to make that choice at 17, 16, see it at 13. Man, that's a gift that I could have never given those kids if I didn't do this thing. So I start feeling right now that I'm actually building a legacy for the first time. And it's really cool feeling. So that's kind of where I want to get through this COVID, stay positive, stay mindset. Cause it's a struggle every day, even with all the training and me I'm not like some of these people that don't have an option right now. They are home waiting on the government to do what they said they were going to do for everybody. And I will not go there, but that's been one of the big mindset things I've had a real trouble with these last couple of weeks. We're brought up in this country to believe in the government and trust what they say and da 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 da. And when they tell you you're going to get this in 3 days and it doesn't happen, you start questioning a lot of things. And I've really had a hard time with that. And I've pulled away and successfully had a few great days, and I'm back on track, thank God. But, I'm not a media guy. I'm not a news guy. And I'm forced to find out stuff. And it's all around now, and it's hard to avoid. And finding the right, because I need to know certain things to make decisions on how much alcohol I'm going to buy, because it's all tied to supply and demand. And with all that income being cut, I have to be super careful. This impulsive gambler had to go bye-bye a long time ago. I have every single, in a gambling analogy, every decision now, every day that's coming at a warp speed is almost an entire amount of our net worth being put on every transaction. And it's scary. It's freaky, but it's also, it's what I do, and it's what I've been trained to do. And I didn't know it till now. So I'm confident in doing it. But, there is a slight problem sometimes feeling like that, you're putting it all in red again. You know how that plays out. You lived in Vegas. You know what I mean? So there's that. And those are just real life things, even though the perception is, man, he hit it with that sanitizer right at the beginning. And now everybody in the world's doing sanitizer. And we all still can't keep up with the demand. Easy to say how brilliant that was, but, the real life is it's not easy every single day, even having that. There's a lot of people that don't. And I'm in their boat right now too with, where's the help coming? Like your entire world got turned upside down. And, just because something's popular and selling right now, the real life of it is, as people that are entrepreneurs listening to this would know, you have to reinvest back into that. And when the demand's that high, every bit of our money is just going straight back into buying that stuff. And the market is as volatile as anything you've seen on the stock market or any other oil market. I didn't even know it was a commodity, isopropyl, until this happened. And now I'm watching this like a day trader, and I've never done much of that either. So, it's crazy right now what's going on, but it's not all fun and games at all right now. It's still scary every single day. And this sanitizer thing could absolutely blow up and be the best thing ever. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? Nobody really does. It's all just forecast and prediction at this point. So
Yeah.
I think it's a good bet for what we're in and the situation that we're in. And we're working on a second pivot too, to get Sudz back on the map. And I'll tell you a little bit about that really, really quick. Because it's so cool, because it's helping out. It didn't dawn on me how many not-for-profits and charities were getting drilled by this too. I just didn't have the time to do those 2-3 step thinking processes. To these not-for-profits, donors' monies are drying up. Their 5Ks are canceled. Their fundraising events, galas, all these are canceled. Well, Sudz can provide household things that people are not even able to get at Walmart now on a regular basis. And we can deliver to your house, curbside, nobody touches anything, on your porch, and do it with an e-commerce website that gives back a percentage to our partners who take our marketing stuff and spread it around for us. So we've just pivoted an old school guerrilla order form thing from an 11-state area that we covered. And now we're doing one county with a quick pivot over to a 4-county wide a delivery thing and completely turning that whole business model upside down. And literally we did it in 3 weeks, and it rolled out Monday this week, and we've already had 5 partners jump on board. So I mean, it's just crazy, man. It's like I'm back into making all the right moves again.
Yeah.
So back to that balance, man. The teeter totter was doing one of these, and just like everything in life, it's starting to kind of, the swings are getting less, and things are starting to work out, And I just got to make sure moving forward that anything that feels like it did in the old days that equaled back against the wall that were in my control have to be spot on, because things that are outside of your control can wreck your life just like that too. So right now in this time frame, I just don't feel like there's enough room for any bad decisions like that. So I'm just uber careful about it now. And I think coming out of that, it's going to start a new foundation and fixed all the cracks. And that, as a person and in business, is going to be the start of whatever this new chapter is going to be when this is all going. So I can hint around that it's definitely got a podcast and definitely has a book involved, and I'm working out those as I start trying to get time to put all this together. But I've always wanted to do both of those, but I never felt like there was anything that would be worth talking about. But this story is really fun to do, so I'm assuming it's going to be pretty fun to hear about. So I can't wait to get some free time so I can start journaling it all out and start learning how to write a book for the first time.
Yeah, I mean,
And a
based on your
podcast,
experience, I'm sure you'll figure it out. Based on your experience, I'm sure you spend a couple of days on Google and you'll be good to go.
No, I got the cheaper tribe now that has a lot of that for me already. It's better than Google.
Man, well, we're coming up on 2 hours, Jeremy. It's been
Holy
awesome connecting
cow.
with you and hearing about your story. And I know there's a ton of wisdom that people will be able to take away. And it's especially a lot of fun to be able to see firsthand all the stuff that you're doing with the hand sanitizer in your community. And I mean, just the way that you're able to keep things going and keep a good attitude. I mean, it's just really inspiring. It's been fun to watch. I have one more question for you, but before I do that, I just want to give you a chance to let people know how to connect with you, where to find you, where to buy hand sanitizer if they can.
Social media is probably the easiest way. Just look me up, Jeremy Kean, on Facebook, and the businesses are all tied into my Facebook profile online. So I would say Instagram, I'll get there, but I just still haven't got there. I'm an old man, I think, in the Instagram. I think Facebook's about as techie as I've been able to get yet. So I'll get there on Instagram. If you're an Instagram lover, I'll find you when you send a message or something there. But Facebook's definitely quicker.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, man, what does legacy mean to you?
Right now, I think it's kind of started to finally form its definition for me. And I think for me, it's literally just being able to give opportunities to right now my kids, and show them the value of a dollar and the things that I don't think are the most common things in the world right now that I was able to learn as a kid. But at the same time, just being able to help. It's become the theme of everything. So I just really want to be able to build and have, security and things financially and all that myself, but to be able to pass down and all that, like everybody kind of probably wants. But I don't have that greed and DuPont registry thing anymore. To me, if I'm going to count anything, it's count how many lives I'm able to change. And I'm just stoked about getting to that journey, So, I think that probably defines the legacy for me. When I pass away, man, I want people to say, man, that guy was crazy. He was this, that, and the other, but by golly, he would help somebody. He would stop what he was doing and help somebody with whatever he had. And, I think that's probably the biggest thing I could ever do in my time here. So looking forward to being able to do more of that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, man. And again, it's been a blast having you on. I've really enjoyed connecting with you. Super
man,
grateful
this
for
has
your
been
time.
fun. Appreciate the time too, man. I appreciate being able to do this. It's fun to sit and talk about it and not be on the phone all day with alcohol purveyors.
For sure. So for anybody that's listening, I'll post links to his social media accounts in the show notes so you guys can connect with him there. If you're liking the show content, it'd mean the world to me if you could leave a review, give us some rating on your favorite podcast platform. And if there's anything specific you have in terms of feedback for the show, that's a great way to do it. You can also reach us on the website, rorymillerbrands.com, and submit the podcast form there. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see everybody again soon.